Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As mentioned, my name is Joel Halse, and today we're going to talk about how I'm looking to help people with a more effective group environment for working together when working together online. So how did we get here? Well, the story starts when we saw our workplace change to a digital workplace. And that happened about 15 years ago when AOL and Delphi introduced email into the popular culture by making their email systems available over the internet. Now, 5 years ago, when you came home from your family vacations and you wanted to share your family photos and stories, you quite likely would have attached all those photos to an email and sent it out to 28 people. Now today, what you're much more likely to do is to post those photos and stories into an application like Facebook or Flickr or MySpace. Now, when you engage in group work in the work environment today in 2008, you're probably still going to manage that work via email. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So what I'm hoping to do in the next 5 minutes is just very quickly take us through a story where we need to explore and understand 3 concepts so we can move our understanding of what we do today and why we should perhaps explore doing it differently. And those 3 concepts are, when and why do we engage in online collaboration? And then second is, well, how do we do it today? And what's wrong with that anyway? And then last, well, what are the tools and concepts we need to understand so that we can do this a little bit easier? So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce us to Emily, Ethan, Sophia, Tony, Madison, and Andrew. And these are all figments of my imagination. Okay? Emily is the organizational leader, and this is a group, one of about 23 different groups and committees, that is part of the not-for-profit organization that these people work in. And Ethan is the newly hired executive assistant to help Emily manage the digital communications and the management of all the things that are happening within all these different groups. Sophia, Madison, and Tony are working professionals. They are volunteers in this organization, and they are dedicated to seeing this organization succeed. And we have Andrew, who is a consultant, hired specifically for his knowledge to help this group advance their project forward. Now, when and why would these people collaborate online? And as you'll see, the reason why I've made these people up is that this mirrors an example work environment and process that we see a lot of, but not everybody's overly excited about the way that we do things right now. And this group is no exception, because 4 days ago they were in a meeting, they created a plan, and the plan had 4 steps. And after the meeting, they all went off to do their individual work in an effort to help the group succeed. Okay? And Ethan ran into a problem, and Sophia's shortly going to run into a problem too. And Ethan sends an email to Emily saying, I need some help with step 3. If we do what we said, it's going to cost us way more than we thought. And Emily, who gets about 100 to 200 emails a day, because she's part of 23 different committees and groups, gets to the email the next day and fires it down to Andrew. Andrew sees the problem, replies to Ethan, CC Emily to let her know what's going on. All is fairly good. Except for that Sophia has run into a problem as well and doesn't want to bother Emily with this and is comfortable working with Tony and Madison and sends them a quick email and said, what do you think? And Tony replies, CC Madison says, well, that's not a problem. If we do this, it should work. Well, fortunately, Madison and Emily had a conversation that afternoon, and they're fairly, now Madison's getting the impression that there's something else going on here that might cause a problem, sends an email to Emily later that afternoon and says, what do you think? And then she follows up with a phone call in the morning because, of course, Emily's very busy. She gets about 100 to 200 emails a day and doesn't got this one yet. And says, well, thanks for the phone call. I appreciate the reminder. Sends it down to Andrew. Andrew now sees both of these problems, goes, hang on a second, and sends off an email to everybody saying we should change plans here a little bit because we've got a problem. Ethan replies, Sophia replies. Now, the purpose of this story is to focus on 2 things. One is the tools that are being used, email, are individual by nature. You're talking to one person at a time, or you blast out, but there's no central location for this to happen. And second of all, what did it take here? What did it take to see a shift in their plans when they're all not in the same room? Well, it took 23 emails 8 CCs, 2 phone calls, a live conversation. All 6 people had to take action, and it took 5 working days. And what's really important as well is if Madison hadn't had the good fortune of having a conversation with Emily and seeing, they probably would have been in a committee meeting in about 2 weeks from now, talking about how Ethan and Andrew are doing this, and Sophia and Tony agreed on that, and oh my goodness, now they've got to repair the damage and figure out what they're going to do next. So the question here is this. When we can't all be in the same room when we work together, and this happens all the time, how do you do it differently and how do you do it better? Well, if you give these people, this group, a central environment that uses these technologies such as social networking, discussions, wikis, and blogs, they're able to have this central place where they can affect group work and change a plan in their group work without all that headache. For example, when you have a social network that ties them together, they've formed a group where they have a discussion. Well, now Ethan can post quickly to the discussion and say, look, I got a problem. Everybody's notified in this central location, and Andrew comes in and says, great, let's just solve it this way. But fortunately now, Sophia has visibility. Sophia chimes up and says, hang on a second, if you do that, that's going to affect me. So Andrew says, well, instead of doing this, that, and the other thing, let's just combine that and the other thing and go with this. And Ethan pipes up and says, sounds like a great idea. And instead of 5 days and 6 people taking action, you have about 2 hours, 6 posts, and only 3 people taking action. And these are not left in the dark. They are fully aware it's going on. And the next time they sit and they have a meeting, they will be talking about the next set of problems. They'll be advancing their agenda, and they'll be achieving their group goals. And this is important because these people are volunteers. These people are brought together by a common objective. They're excited about achieving success. And when they're using individual communication tools like email, and you end up with these problems, it destroys group cohesiveness. And we find this in organizations right through to businesses. And half of your business right now is emerging into an environment where they understand this stuff. They use Facebook at home and they don't get why these things aren't in the workplace. And the other half are saying, I don't know this stuff and it scares the heck out of me. And my job is simply to facilitate the discussion so that we can do 3 things. Why do we do this? Because we can't always sit in the same room. What do we do now that's a problem? Well, that story pretty clearly articulates an issue of ineffective communications where the group is not able to do what they're trying to do. And how do you fix it? Well, there are some very specific steps that one needs to take to enable change for your group by telling them why to change, how to change, giving them the tools, and then helping them through to the end. And instead of taking 5 days, they're 2 hours and 3 people later moving their initiatives forward.